There is an old saying in diplomacy, there are no permanent friends or enemies, only permanent interests. Russia seems to be proving it. The Soviet Union spent 10 years and 15,000 lives trying to defeat the Afghan Mujahideen. The Taliban is their ideological heir. And this Wednesday, their successors sat down in Moscow and signed a military partnership. So what exactly was signed? Honestly, we don't fully know. Neither Moscow nor Kabul released the details. What we do know is this. Taliban Defense Minister Mullah Yaqub Mujahid flew to Moscow, called Russia an important global power and said the deal was of utmost importance to Afghanistan. Russia's Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu, one of Vladimir Putin's closest aides, used the meeting to slam Western sanctions and demanded that Afghan assets be unfrozen. To understand why this matters, you need to rewind all the way to 1979. The Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan and fought a brutal decade-long war against insurgent groups historically linked to the same Taliban that now governs Kabul. For years after, Moscow viewed the Taliban as an extremist threat. Then 2021 happened. The United States pulled out. The Taliban walked back into power, and Russia faced a very practical question. Do we ignore the new reality or do we engage it? Moscow chose engagement. It kept its embassy open in Kabul, it maintained communication channels, and gradually what began as cautious contact became structured cooperation. Then in 2025, Russia made it official. It became the first country in the world to formally recognize the Taliban government. Russia also removed the Taliban from its list of banned terrorist organizations. So what does Russia actually get from this? Here's the honest answer. Probably not troops, not weapons, at least not in the way North Korea delivered both after signing its own military pact with Moscow in June 2024. It was a deal that sent thousands of North Korean soldiers to fight on European soil. Analysts say an equivalent deal with the Taliban is unlikely. The Taliban's position, you see, is too fragile. Its military is too stretched, its economy too broken for it to export fighters to a war thousands of miles away. What Russia actually wants is simple and strategically smarter. Russia wants the Taliban to secure Afghanistan's northern border. That's the soft underbelly of Central Asia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, countries Moscow considers its backyard. These countries sit directly south of Russia and act as a buffer zone. Instability in these regions will have a spillover effect in Moscow. And then there's trade. Kazakhstan and others are also important for oil, gas, and transit routes. The real threat Russia is concerned about, is the ISIS-K. It is called the Islamic State Khorasan province. It is the Islamic State's Afghanistan chapter, which has been expanding aggressively. Russia wants the Taliban to contain it because the group sits near Moscow's strategic perimeter, and the Taliban has been fighting ISIS-K too. Why? Because ISIS-K rejects the Taliban and claims it is not pure enough ideologically. Both groups compete for fighters, weapons, and influence. And Russia is using the Taliban as a border guard, an outsourced security force for Central Asia. So Moscow doesn't have to manage it while it's busy in Ukraine. Now, does this agreement change the battlefield in Ukraine? Not immediately, not directly. But here's the broader picture. Russia is systematically building a coalition of partnerships outside the Western world. North Korea for troops and munitions, Iran for drones, China for dual-use technology, and now Afghanistan for strategic depth and regional control. Each deal individually may seem limited. Together they form an architecture, a parallel world order where Russia is not isolated but networked. Every new agreement buys Moscow more time, more resources, more leverage. Politics doesn't just make strange bunkmates. Sometimes it makes you forget you were enemies at all. Staying on the topic of weapons, Ukraine is getting a new fighter jet and Kyiv believes it could make a difference on the battlefield with Moscow. Sweden has agreed to provide the Gripen fighter jets to Ukraine. The aircraft is designed for a very specific kind of war. It can operate from highways and can be serviced quickly. It also does not need large air bases to keep flying. That makes it particularly attractive for a country facing regular missile and drone attacks. But will the new fighter jets be enough to change the balance in the sky? Here's the report.
The war in Ukraine has entered its fifth year. Yet the skies above the country remain as dangerous as ever. Drones arrive in swarms. Missiles strike from hundreds of kilometers away. And every night brings the possibility of another attack. Now Kyiv is betting on a new weapon to help defend those skies: the Swedish Gripen fighter jet. Ukraine has announced plans to buy 20 new Gripen E aircraft from Sweden. Stockholm will also donate 16 Gripen C and D fighters from its own air force. Those donated aircraft are expected to arrive in 2027. The newer versions are scheduled to follow from 2030. The deal is part of a broader agreement, one that could eventually see Kyiv acquire up to 150 Gripens.
This is a historic decision for Sweden, but one that also significantly strengthens Ukraine's air defense.
So what makes the Gripen so important? The aircraft is designed by Swedish defense company Saab. It is known as a multi-role fighter. That means it can perform several missions using the same platform. It can engage enemy aircraft, carry out strikes against ground targets, and support wider air defense operations. But its biggest advantage may be flexibility. The Gripen can operate from highways and dispersed locations. It does not depend on large military air bases. The jet is also quicker to service than many competing aircraft. That makes it particularly useful for a country facing constant bombardment.
These jets, Gripens, with specific weapons, especially meteors, missiles, and etc., which can destroy 200 kilometers plus. So we think that we will push out these jets, Russian jets, and they will not be able to use massively aerial bombs.
Those comments reveal the bigger goal. Kyiv wants to push Russian aircraft farther from the front and reduce the threat from glide bombs. But fighter jets can only solve part of the problem, because some of Russia's most dangerous weapons never enter a dogfight. They are launched from hundreds of kilometers away, and they arrive at extreme speed. The threat was visible once again over the weekend. Russia launched one of its largest aerial assaults on the Ukrainian capital. Officials said around 90 missiles and 600 drones were fired overnight. Among them was the Oreshnik missile. Moscow describes it as a next-generation ballistic weapon, capable of traveling at around Mach 10. That is roughly 10 times the speed of sound. Its velocity leaves defenders with very little warning. The barrage killed civilians. Dozens more were wounded, and buildings across Kyiv were damaged. That is why Zelensky is pursuing another priority at the same time: more Patriot missile ammunition from the United States. Patriot missiles are among the few systems capable of intercepting advanced ballistic threats. Kyiv says existing supplies remain under pressure as Russian attacks continue.
We need to live now, and we need to save people today. And today, right now, it is the United States that manufactures this ballistic defense. I started such conversations back with President Joe Biden. I will continue them with President Donald Trump.
Taken together, these requests tell a larger story. Gripens can help contest the skies. Patriots can help shield cities, and both point to the same reality. More than 4 years after the war began, this conflict is no longer only about holding ground. It is increasingly becoming a test of endurance, industrial capacity, and how quickly allies can turn promises into military capability.